first challenge backfires. The moment the aliens decided to intervene, they thought they had won. After observing the humans surviving against the hostile world, they realized they had made a grave mistake. Humans were still alive. Worse, they had started adapting and thriving in ways the aliens could never have predicted. They had underestimated the survival instincts of humanity. Now, the aliens were prepared to end this once and for all. The aliens had sent the humans to the Class 15 Deathworld as a test, expecting them to die quickly. This planet was home to creatures more dangerous than any species could face, with an environment so harsh that even the toughest life forms struggled to survive. But the humans had defied all odds. They had found shelter, hunted for food, and even begun to tame the wild creatures of the world. The humans were no longer just surviving, they were thriving. Determined to put an end to this, the alien overlords decided to release their secret weapon, a massive, terrifying alien war beast bred for destruction. These creatures were the perfect killing machines, monstrous, fast, and strong beyond belief. They had been bred to tear through planets and destroy entire civilizations, making them an unstoppable force. The aliens believed that this would finally be the end for the humans. The war beasts were unleashed on the humans' camp. They roared as they tore through the forest, shaking the ground beneath their massive feet. Their large, red eyes gleamed with a hunger for destruction, and their razor-sharp claws and teeth glistened in the dim light. The aliens were sure that nothing could survive the onslaught of these terrifying creatures. Back at the human camp, the leader of the group, a man named Captain Jason, stood in front of his team, looking out over the clearing where they had set up their temporary home. The air was thick with tension. They had been waiting for something like this to happen. The aliens were ruthless, and they knew that the moment they showed any sign of strength, their enemies would respond. "We need to move fast," Captain Jason said, his voice steady but urgent. "They've sent something worse this time. These creatures aren't just wild animals. We've got to think, not just fight. We'll survive this, but we need to work together." Jason had learned a lot about the Deathworld. The planet's hostile nature had forced him and his group to adapt quickly. They were no longer just ordinary humans. They were survivors. They had learned to live with the planet's dangers. The first thing they had done after landing was to study their surroundings. They mapped out the best escape routes identified, dangerous creatures, and created traps to protect themselves. When the war beasts arrived, Jason immediately knew what they were up against. He quickly ordered the group to take cover in their makeshift shelters, built out of materials they had gathered from the surrounding forest. The war beasts would be powerful, but they were not invincible. The humans had something the aliens didn't. Ingenuity. Jason single quotes S second in command, Lieutenant Sarah, had already set up a few traps near the edge of the camp. They weren't much, but the Deathworld had its own rules, and Jason had learned that the planet's dangerous creatures were often more vulnerable to environmental hazards than brute force. As the war beasts roared in the distance, Jason knew they had to use their surroundings to their advantage. "Sarah," Jason called, "get the traps ready. I'll need you to use your knowledge of this world. These beasts won't fall easily, but if we can wear them down, we might have a chance." Sarah nodded and hurried off, quickly checking the traps that had been prepared earlier. They had dug shallow pits, covered with sharp rocks and branches. The idea was to slow the beasts down and lead them into these traps. It wasn't foolproof, but it was the only option they had. The group worked quickly, setting up more obstacles in the clearing. They made sure to stay hidden, their breath steady as the sounds of the war beasts' approach grew louder. The war beasts arrived with a crash, their massive bodies pushing through trees like they were twigs. The ground shook with every step they took, and their cries echoed across the landscape. The humans held their breath as the creatures neared the traps. But instead of charging straight into the camp, the war beasts began to circle, sniffing the air, their senses alert. They had detected something. "Stay still," Jason whispered urgently to his team. "They're trying to outsmart us. Don't let them catch us off guard." Jason had expected the beasts to charge headfirst into the camp. Instead, they were cautious, scanning the area with their sharp, predatory eyes. It seemed like the creatures weren't as mindless as the aliens had hoped. They were intelligent, calculating their next move. Jason's heart raced. This was a different kind of fight against beasts that could think, adapt, and react like predators. For a few tense moments, the creatures paced around the perimeter of the camp, sniffing the air and prowling like hunters. Jason watched them carefully, waiting for the right moment. Then suddenly, one of the beasts stepped into a trap. The ground beneath it gave way, and it crashed into the pit below, its massive body tumbling into the sharp rocks. The other war beasts roared in fury, rushing toward their trapped companion. But it was too late. The humans had prepared for this moment. As the beasts charged, they triggered more traps. Thick vines sprung up from the ground, wrapping around their legs, pulling them down. The humans had used the planet's own resources to turn the tables on their enemies. For the first time, the war beasts were on the defensive. The humans had fought back with strategy, turning their environment into a weapon. One by one, the beasts fell, trapped and struggling. The aliens watching from afar were stunned. They had never expected this. The humans were not only surviving, they were winning. As the final war beast fell to the ground, Captain Jason looked out at his team, a mixture of disbelief and triumph on his face. They had done it. Against all odds, they had survived yet another challenge. The aliens had sent their most powerful weapon, and it had backfired. This is just the beginning, Jason muttered to himself, his voice full of determination. They have no idea what's coming. This was just the first challenge, but it had proven one thing: humans were not to be underestimated. They had turned the tables on the aliens, showing them that they could adapt, fight back, and overcome anything. The Deathworld had tried to break them, but it had only made them stronger. Now, the aliens would have to think twice before challenging humanity again. The humans' unexpected advantage, the battle against the war beasts, had been won, but the fight was far from over. Captain Jason and his team stood amidst the wreckage of the traps and the fallen beasts. There was a moment of stunned silence, followed by the deep, steady breathing of the survivors. They had just faced what the aliens considered an unstoppable force, and come out victorious. But in that victory, something else had occurred that no one could have predicted. The humans weren't just surviving. They were evolving in real time, adapting to the planet's dangers in ways that made them more dangerous than any of the aliens could have imagined. The Deathworld had become their new training ground, and with each passing day, they were learning faster than any other species could. "We did it," Lieutenant Sarah said, still catching her breath. "But what now?" Jason glanced at the wreckage of the war beasts. They weren't just monsters. They were symbols of the aliens' belief that humanity was fragile and weak. They had sent these creatures to wipe out the humans, and yet the tables had turned. The humans were proving that their tenacity and ingenuity were stronger than brute force. "We keep moving forward," Jason said, his voice steady. "The aliens have underestimated us every step of the way. We've taken down their most powerful weapon, but they're not going to stop. We need to be ready for whatever they throw at us." Next, the humans gathered around the camp, preparing for what was to come. They began scavenging the bodies of the war beasts, looking for anything useful: materials for tools, weapons, or even parts of the creatures that could be repurposed. It was an act of survival, but also a sign of something deeper. The humans were no longer relying on their old ways. They were turning the Deathworld to their advantage. "Captain," Sarah called out from the edge of the camp, "you need to see this." Jason made his way to Sarah, who was crouching beside a pile of broken rocks. There, in the wreckage of the beasts, was something that caught his eye. An alien artifact embedded in the remains of one of the creatures. It was a strange device, shaped like a small cube, with glowing markings running across its surface. Jason's heart raced as he realized what it might be. "This is alien tech," he muttered under his breath, running his fingers over the smooth surface of the cube. "Maybe it's a tracker or a communicator, but how did it end up here? We'll find out soon enough," Sarah said, glancing up at him. "The aliens are watching us. They'll want this back." Jason knew she was right. The artifact could be a crucial piece in understanding how the aliens were tracking them. But it also presented a new opportunity. If they could learn to use the technology, they could gain an edge far above the Deathworld. Turn the tables. The alien overlords were staring at the live feed from their observation satellites, their minds struggling to comprehend what they had just witnessed. Their war beasts, their ultimate weapon, had been decimated by a mere handful of humans. They had hoped to break the human spirits, to show them that they were nothing in the face of real power. But instead, the humans had fought back with an unexpected ferocity, and now the aliens were faced with a reality they weren't prepared for. How could they have survived? One of the alien commanders growled, his voice filled with disbelief. "The war beasts are unstoppable. No species has ever resisted them. Why did they not die?" Another alien, a strategist, stood silent for a moment, staring at the footage. "This isn't just survival," he said slowly. "The humans are learning. They're adapting faster than we anticipated. They've begun to use the planet against us. This is not just a fight for survival. This is a fight for control." The commander slammed his fist against the console. "Then we'll give them a fight they can't win. We'll send more, bigger, stronger forces. We'll crush them before they have a chance to get too powerful." The strategist turned toward the commander, his expression dark. "We must be careful. If we send too much too quickly, they might turn our own tactics against us. These humans are resourceful. We've underestimated them every step of the way." But the commander was already fixated on his own plan, his mind set on the idea that sheer force would finally break the humans. They had already suffered one failure. There could be no more mistakes. "We will send everything," he declared. "No more games. We will break them." Back on the Deathworld, Jason and his team continued their preparations, their resolve stronger than ever. They knew the next wave of alien forces would be coming soon, and they would need every advantage they could get. The mysterious alien artifact was just one piece of the puzzle. They gathered around the campfire that evening, sharing stories and talking about what they had accomplished. The weight of the day's battle had not yet fully set in, but they all knew that they had made a mark, that they had forced the aliens to take notice. The Deathworld was their proving ground now. They had proven that humans were not weak far from it. They were resilient, adaptive, and unstoppable when they worked together. Jason stood up, looking out over the horizon where the sky darkened as night fell. "We've survived this long," he said, his voice carrying a quiet but powerful conviction. "We will keep surviving. We will keep fighting. No matter what they throw at us, we'll keep moving forward." There was a murmur of agreement from his team, each of them feeling the weight of his words. "We're not just fighting to survive," Jason continued, his gaze unwavering. "We're fighting for our future, and we will win." As the humans prepared for the coming storm, the alien overlords had no idea what they were about to face. They believed they could crush humanity with their power. But what they didn't realize was that humanity had already learned to fight in ways that would make the aliens' most powerful weapons seem obsolete. The Deathworld had turned into humanity's proving ground, a place where they were becoming stronger, smarter, and more dangerous with each passing day. The aliens had unleashed their first weapon, and it had backfired. But the war was just beginning, and the humans weren't going down without a fight. The real battle had only just begun, and humanity was ready. Asterisk the hidden power of the Deathworld as the days passed on the Deathworld, humanity's small victory against the war beasts had done more than boost their morale. It had ignited something deeper within them. A sense of unity, of purpose, began to grow among the survivors. They had turned the most hostile place in the galaxy into a playground for survival, and a battleground for their future. Captain Jason stood at the edge of the camp, looking out over the dense alien jungle. The air was thick, humid, and alive, with the strange sounds of creatures lurking in the shadows. Yet, despite the constant danger, Jason felt a strange sense of peace. They were alive, they were still here. And in this hostile world, that was something to be proud of. "We've done more than survive," Jason muttered to himself, running a hand through his hair. "We're starting to understand this world better than they ever thought possible." As the survivors gathered around their makeshift campfire later that evening, Jason and his team began to discuss their next steps. They knew the aliens would send more waves of attack, bigger, stronger, and perhaps more cunning. But this time, things would be different. The humans were no longer just fighting for survival. They were beginning to take control of their environment. They had studied the war beasts, learning from the fight, and now they understood the planet in a way that no alien could. The Deathworld was full of hidden secrets, many of which the aliens had failed to comprehend. There were strange minerals beneath the surface, plants with healing properties, and creatures that could be used for their advantage. The key to survival was no longer just fighting back. It was learning how to use the planet itself to their benefit. Sarah, who had become one of the most skilled tacticians among the humans, pointed to a map they had drawn of the Deathworld's terrain. "You can't just keep relying on traps and brute force," she said, her finger tracing the lines of the planet's jungle-like paths. "We need to go deeper. There are resources here we haven't even tapped into yet. The creatures, the plants, they're not just threats. Some of them could become allies." Jason's eyes narrowed with thought. "You're saying we need to start thinking like the Deathworld itself?" "Exactly," Sarah nodded. "We're not fighting against this world. We're learning from it. And once we understand it completely, we'll be in control." As the humans began to dig deeper into the planet's resources, something unexpected happened. The Deathworld itself seemed to fight back, not with violence, but with subtle resistance. Their actions stirred something ancient within the planet's ecosystem, and slowly they began to uncover strange phenomena they hadn't anticipated. One day, as Jason and his team ventured deeper into the jungle, they stumbled upon a hidden, underground cavern. Inside, they discovered glowing crystals embedded in the rock, casting an eerie, pulsating light. These weren't just ordinary crystals. The moment Jason touched one, he felt a strange hum deep in his chest. It was as though the crystal was alive, responding to him, syncing with his heartbeat. "They're not just rocks," Jason said, his voice filled with awe. "They're alive. These crystals are connected to something bigger. This planet isn't just a killer, it's smart." The team examined the crystals further, discovering that they could amplify their energy. Jason realized that these crystals could be used to enhance their technology. If they could harness their power, they could level the playing field against the aliens' advanced weaponry. "Think of it," Sarah said, her voice filled with excitement. "We could use this to power our weapons, our shields, even our communications. This could be our key to taking the fight back to them." For the first time since landing on the Deathworld, Jason felt a true surge of hope. The humans had been sent to this planet to die. The aliens had expected them to fall, to perish like every species before them. But they were not just surviving, they were discovering a new power something the aliens had overlooked. The Deathworld was more than just a deadly environment. It was a weapon in itself, and the humans had learned how to wield it. Back in the Alien Command Center, the High Commanders watched as their satellites observed the humans' progress. They had hoped that the war beasts would break the humans' will, but the creatures had been destroyed. They had sent more advanced weapons, but they too had fallen to the humans' cunning. Now they saw something that terrified them even more. Humanity was no longer a prey species. They were becoming a threat. "We need to stop them before they unlock more of the planet's secrets," one of the commanders said, his tone filled with urgency. "They're learning too fast. This world is dangerous, yes, but now the humans are starting to control it. If they tap into that power, they will be unstoppable." But it wasn't just about the crystals. The Deathworld had deeper secrets that even the aliens didn't understand. An ancient, sentient intelligence buried beneath its surface, watching the humans' every move. It had been dormant for eons, waiting for the right time. And now, it had chosen to awaken. It wasn't just the war beasts that posed a threat to the humans. Something much more powerful had begun to stir Dot as Jason and his team continued their exploration. They unknowingly triggered a series of events that would change the course of the war. The Deathworld itself was beginning to recognize the humans, not as invaders, but as the new masters of the planet. And with that recognition came a strange new ally and ancient force that would help them fight back against the aliens. But with that ally came danger, too. The aliens may have underestimated the humans, but they had no idea what they were up against. The Deathworld was no longer just a test. It was the key to humanity's survival. And with each discovery, the humans were gaining power that no alien force could have anticipated. What was once a deadly, hostile environment was becoming humanity's greatest weapon. Asterisk. The humans had proven one thing. They were not just survivors. They were builders. They were adapters. And now they were masters of the Deathworld itself. The war was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a battle for control of something much more significant. A new future, one where humanity could rise above its past and conquer the galaxy. The aliens had made a fatal mistake in sending humans to a Deathworld. What they hadn't realized was that humans didn't just survive adversity. They thrived in it. And now, the true fight was just beginning. Asterisk, the awakening of the Deathworld. As the days grew longer on the Deathworld, Jason and his team continued to make incredible progress. They had found new resources, adapted new technologies, and even begun to understand the planet's strange, sentient energy. The glowing crystals were proving to be the key to unlocking a wealth of untapped power. But the deeper they dug into the planet's secrets, the more they began to sense an undeniable shift, a pulse beneath the ground, like a heartbeat. It wasn't just the crystals that were alive. Something more ancient and far more powerful was awakening. The planet itself was no longer a passive player in the war. It was becoming active. Jason had always suspected there was more to the Deathworld than met the eye, but now it was clear. They were tapping into something much bigger, something that the aliens had never anticipated. One evening, as the team gathered around their fire, Sarah looked up at the sky, her eyes narrowed in concentration. "I've been noticing something strange. The air. It's thicker tonight, almost like it's charged with energy." Jason's heart skipped a beat. He had felt it too. A subtle shift. In the atmosphere, it was as though the planet itself was reacting to their presence, but in a way that didn't feel hostile. There was a strange harmony to it, almost like the planet was waking up. "What do you mean?" Jason asked, his voice cautious. "I don't know exactly," Sarah replied, "but it's like the planet is aware of us now. Like it's choosing to help. U.S. But there's something more. Something beneath the surface. I think we're just scratching the surface of what this place really is. Jason frowned, looking around at the rest of the team. They all knew the stakes. The aliens were closing in, and every minute they wasted could be their last. But something, in Sarah's words, stuck with him. The planet is aware of us. I'll check the data logs again, Jason said, though his mind was already far ahead of him. He needed to know more, and there was only one way to get the answers they needed. Go deeper into the heart of the Deathworld. The next morning, Jason gathered his team and set out toward the center of the mysterious caverns they had found. There were more of the glowing crystals buried deeper underground, and they were emitting strange electromagnetic pulses. The technology, which they had assumed would power their weapons and shields, seemed to be reacting to their presence in ways they didn't understand. The air crackled with energy, and every step they took deeper into the caverns felt more intense. The farther they ventured, the more they felt a strange force pulling them forward. It was a quiet, almost hypnotic feeling, like the planet was calling to them. Jason was no stranger to danger, but this was different. There was something more at play here, something that even he couldn't quite explain. As they reached the cavern's deepest chamber, a sudden blinding light enveloped the team. The glowing crystals pulsed wildly, and the temperature in the room shot up dramatically. Sarah staggered back, shielding her eyes. What's happening? This ... This isn't natural. Jason stepped forward cautiously, his heart racing. The light from the crystals intensified, but then suddenly the pulsating stopped. The chamber was plunged into an eerie silence. It was as though time itself had paused. Then a low rumbling sound echoed from deep within the cavern. At first, they thought it was an earthquake, but it wasn't. It was something far stranger. The walls of the cavern began to shift. Slowly, the rock moved, revealing ancient markings, an intricate alien language that none of them had ever seen before. The symbols seemed to glow with a dim, greenish light, and Jason could feel the ground beneath him vibrate with the energy. "What is this?" Sarah whispered. "This doesn't feel like just a planet anymore." Before anyone could respond, a deep, resonant voice filled the chamber, one that wasn't heard with the ears, but felt in their minds. The voice was both terrifying and soothing at the same time. It spoke slowly, deliberately, as if it was speaking directly to each of them. "You have awakened the heart of the Deathworld. I am the voice of the core." The team froze, their hearts pounding in unison. Jason's mind raced. The heart of the Deathworld? The voice of the core? What did this mean? "You are the first to understand, to wield the power of this world. You are no longer just visitors. You are now part of the planet's pulse, its lifeblood. But the question remains, will you use this power to save or destroy?" Jason struggled to breathe as the words sank in. This was no ordinary planet. This was a living, breathing entity, an ancient intelligence that had been lying dormant for millennia, waiting for someone to tap into its power. The voice continued, its tone growing more intense. "You have trespassed into the domain of the core. The alien invaders have already claimed parts of this world, but they have failed to understand its true purpose. Now, you must decide. Will you defend this planet, or will you betray its legacy?" Jason's mind spun with questions. The aliens had sent them here to die, but now they were face to face with something far more significant. The Deathworld was not just a test, it was a gateway to something bigger. It was an ancient power that could shift the balance of the entire galaxy. "Captain," Sarah said, her voice trembling, "what do we do?" Jason stood still for a moment, feeling the weight of the decision that lay before him. The voice had spoken, but the responsibility now rested with them. They had awakened something powerful, something that could either save them or doom them. "We fight," Jason said, his voice steady. "We use this power. We defend this world, and we make the aliens regret ever underestimating humanity. As the team left the cavern, the rumbling beneath their feet continued, as if the planet itself was acknowledging their decision. They had taken the first step toward a new future one, where humanity didn't just survive, but conquered the Deathworld. The battle was no longer about escaping. It was about reclaiming the planet, and with it, the power to change the galaxy. Forever. But the aliens were still watching, unaware of the force that was about to be unleashed. The Deathworld had chosen its champions, and humanity was ready to answer its call. Asterisk. The catalyst of rebirth, Jason and his team returned to the camp, their minds racing with the enormity of what had just occurred. The voice of the core had spoken. To them, confirming something they had only begun to suspect. They were no longer mere survivors on a dangerous world. They had become the chosen stewards of a living, breathing planet that had been watching, waiting, and now, awakening. The Deathworld, Jason realized, was more than just a test. It was a living entity, an ancient intelligence that had been dormant for eons, its power buried beneath the surface. And now, humanity had become its catalysts for rebirth. But with this power came a responsibility, one Jason had never fully understood until now. The choice wasn't just about surviving the aliens' attacks. It was about using the planet's newfound power to protect it, to safeguard the delicate balance of life that had flourished for so long in secret. The Deathworld wasn't just a weapon to be wielded, it was an ecosystem, a cornerstone of the galaxy's natural order. And humanity, for better or worse, had become its guardians. "We need to understand everything about this place," Sarah said. As they sat around the fire later that evening, a glow of the crystals they had brought back from the cavern, casting long shadows over the camp. The voice mentioned the invaders. The aliens have claimed parts of the world. We don't know what they've done to it, but we need to figure it out before they do any more damage. Jason nodded grimly, looking out at the dark horizon. The air felt thick with anticipation, charged with the energy of the planet itself. We can't wait for them to come to us. The Deathworld is ours now. If the aliens think they can take it from us, they've got another thing coming. The tension in the air was palpable. The humans had successfully turned the tide against the aliens' war beasts, but now they had a much greater task ahead of them, preventing the aliens from claiming the Deathworld's secrets and power. They couldn't let this planet fall into alien hands. The very next morning, the humans set out on a dangerous expedition to explore more of the cavern network. The voice of the core had shown them a way forward, but they knew they needed more than just the glowing crystals to fight the invaders. The planet was full of secrets, mysteries that had been hidden for ages, and they needed to unlock every single one of them if they were to stand a chance against the alien forces. As they ventured deeper into the tunnels, they discovered an even older, more intricate layer of the Deathworld's infrastructure. The walls of the caverns were covered in inscriptions, strange glyphs, and symbols that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly glow. These were the remnants of the planet's ancient civilization. Jason couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. What kind of beings had once lived here? And why had they vanished? "Look at this," Sarah said, kneeling next to a set of carvings that looked like star maps. "This isn't just art. This is a record. It's showing us the history of the planet. And look, there's a section here that's connected to the invaders. Whoever built this planet knew they were coming." Jason bent down to study the carvings. It was clear that the Deathworld had not always been a dangerous, lifeless world. It had once been a thriving civilization, a beacon in the galaxy. And yet, something catastrophic had happened, something that had transformed the planet into the deadly, hostile place it had become. But what? "We need to learn everything about this," Jason said, his voice thick with determination. "The answers are here somewhere. We need to find out what happened. It's the key to everything." The team spent the next few days deciphering the ancient texts and exploring the underground ruins. They learned that the Deathworld had once been a hub of great power, a center of knowledge and technology, with the ability to manipulate the very fabric of life. But something had gone wrong. An ancient cataclysm had shattered the world, forcing its inhabitants into hiding, leaving behind only traces of their existence. As they dug deeper, they uncovered an even more shocking revelation. The planet itself wasn't just a weapon. It had been designed as a safeguard. The ancient civilization had created it to protect the galaxy from a force that was beyond anything the universe had ever seen. They had known that one day invaders would come, and the Deathworld would rise to meet them. The invaders' alien forces who had once tried to claim the Deathworld's power had known about the planet's history, and they had been using it as a tool to conquer weaker civilizations. But they hadn't realized that the planet had been designed to defend itself, using the very forces of nature to fight back. The Deathworld wasn't just a planet, it was a weapon, a living guardian of the galaxy, and the humans were now its chosen protectors. Back at the camp, Jason gathered his team. The discovery had shaken them all, but it also gave them a sense of purpose. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the future of the galaxy itself. "We've learned something critical," Jason said, his voice firm. The Deathworld wasn't created to be a trap. It was built to protect everything. The ancient civilization that created this place knew that one day someone would have to defend the galaxy from invaders. "And we are that someone?" Sarah nodded. "So, we're not just protecting ourselves. We're protecting the entire galaxy from whatever the aliens are planning." The weight of the responsibility was not lost on them, but it gave them a sense of clarity. They now understood that their fight wasn't just about saving their own species. It was about protecting all life in the galaxy from a threat that no one had foreseen. The Deathworld was no longer just a prison or a weapon. It was their final line of defense, and they had become its chosen defenders. The aliens had made a critical mistake in underestimating humanity, and now they would learn the hard way that humanity would not back down. The planet had chosen them, and they would not fail. As Jason stood at the edge of their camp, looking out at the horizon, he could feel the heartbeat of the planet beneath his feet. The Deathworld was alive, and so were they. The war was far from over, but the humans had just unlocked the key to their future. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were the guardians of the galaxy's last hope, and they were ready to face whatever came next. The stage was set for the final showdown. The humans were no longer helpless victims on a hostile world. They were agents of change, wielding the power of the Deathworld itself. The aliens would soon learn that they had awakened something far greater than they had ever bargained for. The Deathworld would not just fight to survive, it would fight for the galaxy's future. And with humanity at its side, it would win. The storm rises as Jason and his team continued to unlock the secrets of the Deathworld. The tension between them and the alien invaders escalated. The humans had grown stronger, more resourceful, and had gained an unprecedented understanding of the planet they now called home. But the aliens were not oblivious to the changes. Their surveillance was relentless, and the stakes had never been higher. One quiet evening, as the team sat around their campfire, something changed. The atmosphere shifted. The air grew still, almost heavy, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Jason stood up suddenly, scanning the dark horizon. It wasn't just the usual eerie stillness. This felt different, more intense. "Something's coming," he said, his voice low and tense. Sarah looked at him, her expression serious. "Can you feel it too?" Jason nodded. "We've stirred something within the planet. The Deathworld isn't just reacting to us anymore. It's preparing for something." Before anyone could respond, a deep rumble echoed through the ground, sending vibrations through their bones. The sky above them darkened, and the stars seemed to vanish, swallowed by an unnatural darkness. It wasn't a storm, at least. Not a storm any of them had ever seen before. This was something much bigger. The voice of the Corps spoke of invaders. Jason said, his voice grim, "The aliens are coming. And this time, they won't hold back." The ground beneath them trembled as massive forces began to stir deep within the Deathworld. The crystals they had uncovered pulsed with a fierce, almost violent energy, as if they were preparing to unleash their power. The planet itself seemed to be gathering its strength, and it was now clear. This was no longer just a fight between humans and aliens. It was a battle between two forces, both fighting for control of a weapon far more dangerous than anyone had realized that far above. In the alien command ship, the high-ranking officers watched as their fleet began to approach. The Deathworld? They had been preparing for this moment for weeks, gathering all their forces, confident that nothing could stop them. The humans had resisted before, but they were only a small group no match for the might of the alien empire. "Ready the landing." "Parties," the commander barked. "We've wasted enough time. We'll show them just how futile their resistance is." But as the alien fleet drew closer, something unexpected happened. The Deathworld, once a hostile and dangerous environment, began to react in ways that defied logic. Massive storms rose up from the surface, swirling in chaotic patterns, while lightning strikes tore through the atmosphere. It was as if the planet itself was rejecting the alien presence, pushing them back with an overwhelming force. The commander's face turned pale as the storm intensified. The fleet's systems began to malfunction, their navigation and communication systems flickering and failing. One by one, alien ships were struck by powerful energy bursts that seemed to emanate directly from the Deathworld itself. "What is happening?" The commander shouted, slamming his fist against the control panel. "This planet is supposed to be a tool, not a weapon. It's not supposed to fight back, but it was too late." The Deathworld was awakening, and it was furious. Back on the surface, Jason and his team had already begun their preparations. They knew that the aliens wouldn't stop until they took control of the planet, and with the Deathworld now fully awakened, the humans were facing a new challenge: controlling the power of the planet itself. "We've unlocked the planet's power," Sarah said, looking at the map of the cavern systems they had uncovered. "But now we need to figure out how to use it, how to direct it. If the planet is fighting for us, we need to give it a purpose." Jason nodded, his gaze hardening. "We don't just control the planet now. The planet is fighting for us. We need to harness its energy and make sure we're using it in the right way." They gathered around the core of their camp-in area where the ancient crystals had begun to pulse with energy. Jason could feel the hum beneath his feet, the heartbeat of the Deathworld echoing in the air. The voice of the core had said it before. Humanity was the chosen stewards of the planet. But now Jason realized that didn't just mean protecting it. It meant wielding its power to fight back. As the storm continued to ravage the alien fleet above, the humans began to activate the first of the planet's ancient mechanisms. The Deathworld was not just a lifeless rock. It had been engineered as a massive network of energy, linked directly to the life force of the planet. By tapping into the glowing crystals and the Earth's powerful pulse, the humans could channel its power into weapons, shields, and defenses unlike anything the aliens had seen. The team worked furiously, connecting makeshift conduits to the crystals and drawing upon the Deathworld's energy. As the ground shook beneath them, Jason couldn't help but marvel at the power they were awakening. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about turning the tables on their enemies. The humans were no longer the prey. They were becoming the predators. "We have one shot at this," Jason said, his voice unwavering. "We need to unlock everything, harness the planet's energy, and turn it against the aliens. If we fail, this world is lost. If we succeed, we control the galaxy." Above, the alien fleet struggled to regain control. Their ships were damaged, their weapons useless against the storm of energy the Deathworld was unleashing. The storm wasn't just weather, it was a defense mechanism, a weapon that could level entire fleets with the power of the planet itself. "We've unlocked the planet's power," Sarah said, looking at the map of the cavern systems they had uncovered. "But now we need to figure out how to use it, how to direct it. If the planet is fighting for us, we need to give it a purpose." Jason nodded, his gaze hardening. "We don't just control the planet now. The planet is fighting for us. We need to harness its energy and make sure we're using it in the right way." They gathered around the core of their camp, an area where the ancient crystals had begun to pulse with energy. Jason could feel the hum beneath his feet, the heartbeat of the Deathworld echoing in the air. The voice of the core had said it before. Humanity was the chosen stewards of the planet. But now, Jason realized, that didn't just mean protecting it. It meant wielding its power to fight back as the storm continued to ravage the alien fleet above. The humans began to activate the first of the planet's ancient mechanisms. Deathworld was not just a lifeless rock. It had been engineered as a massive network of energy, linked directly to the life force of the planet. By tapping into the glowing crystals and the Earth's powerful pulse, the humans could channel its power into weapons, shields, and defenses unlike anything the aliens had seen. The team worked furiously, connecting makeshift conduits to the crystals and drawing upon the Deathworld's energy. As the ground shook beneath them, Jason couldn't help but marvel at the power they were awakening. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about turning the tables on their enemies. The humans were no longer the prey, they were becoming the predators. "We have one shot at this," Jason said, his voice unwavering. "We need to unlock everything, harness the planet's energy, and turn it against the aliens. If we fail, this world is lost. If we succeed, we control the galaxy." Above, the alien fleet struggled to regain control. Their ships were damaged, their weapons useless against the storm of energy the Deathworld was unleashing. The storm wasn't just weather, it was a defense mechanism, a weapon that could level entire fleets with the power of the planet itself. The commander growled in frustration. "Retreat! All ships retreat!" he shouted. But the fleet's systems were beyond repair, and it was too late. The Deathworld had chosen its champions as the storm raged. Jason and his team focused all their efforts on one last task: unleashing the planet's full power. The ancient mechanism in the heart of the caverns began to hum louder, and the energy concentrated into a single point, aimed at the invaders. The alien fleet had no idea what was about to happen. With a sudden burst of energy, the Deathworld unleashed its full wrath. The ground trembled as energy pulses shot up from the planet's core, ripping through the sky and disintegrating the alien ships in a blinding flash of light. The storm reached its peak, and the sky cracked open with a tremendous roar. The alien fleet was gone, obliterated in seconds, and the Deathworld stood victorious. Jason watched in awe as the storm began to subside, the energy fading into the Earth. Once again, the planet had protected itself. But it wasn't just the planet that had fought. It was humanity that had awakened it. The humans had done the impossible. They had not only survived, they had become the defenders of the galaxy. And in that victory, the true power of the Deathworld had been realized. The invaders had failed. And now, the humans had control of something far more powerful than any weapon. They had control of the galaxy's future. But the war was far from over. The galaxy had been changed forever, and humanity had just begun to wield its new power. The storm had passed, but the real battle was only just beginning. The Deathworld had awakened, and with it, humanity had found its place in the stars. The rising dawn, the light of the Deathworld storm finally began to fade, leaving behind a shattered sky and a trembling landscape. For the first time in weeks, the humans could breathe a little easier. The alien fleet was gone, obliterated in an instant by the planet's awakened power. The Deathworld had proven itself not only as a place of unimaginable danger, but also as humanity's greatest ally. The humans stood victorious, but Jason knew that this was just one battle in an ongoing war. The ground beneath them still hummed with energy. The air was thick with the planet's ancient pulse, and yet there was a calm that followed the storm. It was as if the Deathworld itself had decided to let them rest just for a moment before the true challenge would begin. "We've done it," Sarah said, standing beside Jason, her voice filled with awe. "We've beaten them. The aliens have no idea what just hit them." Jason's gaze turned toward the horizon. The battle against the alien forces had been won, but the stakes had changed. The Deathworld was no longer just a hostile planet. It had become their ally, a source of power that could change the fate of the galaxy. But what would happen next? The aliens weren't the only threat in the universe, and the Deathworld's true purpose was still a mystery. There was so much more to understand. "We've only just begun," Jason muttered, his eyes narrowing with determination. "We have the power now, but we need to be careful. The galaxy is full of other threats, and the aliens will come back stronger. We can't let our guard down." Back at their base camp, the humans worked quickly to rebuild. They were no longer just survivors. They were now the guardians of the Deathworld's power. The glowing crystals they had uncovered were being integrated into their technology, powering their weapons and shields. The planet's energy was unlike anything they had ever seen. It wasn't just raw power. It was alive, pulsating with a consciousness of its own. And the humans were learning how to wield it. Sarah, always the strategist, was already mapping out their next move. "We need to set up a perimeter, fortify our defenses, and prepare for the next wave. The aliens will return. They'll want this power for themselves, and we can't let them take it." Jason nodded, his mind racing. He had seen the potential of the Deathworld's energy, and he knew that it could change the balance of power in the galaxy. The problem was, the Deathworld was too powerful. If they didn't control it properly, they could destroy everything. "We need to learn everything about it," Jason said. "The voice of the core told us that we were chosen for a reason. But it's not just about power. There's something more to this planet. It has a purpose, and we need to understand it before anyone else does." While Jason and his team worked tirelessly to prepare for what was to come, the galaxy's other species were still reeling from the sudden and unexplained disappearance of the alien fleet. Rumors began to spread like wildfire. The great powers of the galaxy, the ones who had once seen humanity as a weak, primitive race, now looked upon them with new eyes. Some saw them as a potential ally. Others as a terrifying new power that could challenge the old order. On the distant planet of Nexus, a massive council of galactic leaders convened to discuss the sudden defeat of the alien forces. None of them knew what had happened, but one thing was clear. Humans had something they did not. "The fleet is gone," said the Zarkonian ambassador, his eyes wide with disbelief. "The humans, they defeated the invaders. How is that possible?" "The Deathworld," replied the Solarian ambassador, her voice cold with concern. "It is no longer just a deadly planet. The humans have unlocked something within it. We need to know what they've done before it's too late." Back on the Deathworld, Jason and his team were unaware of the ripple effects their victory had caused throughout the galaxy. The aliens were not gone. They had only been temporarily defeated. And with the growing rumors about the humans' newfound power, the great powers of the galaxy were starting to turn their attention toward them. The humans had something the rest of the galaxy didn't control over the Deathworld's energy. An ancient power that could tip the balance of the entire universe. But with that power came danger. The Deathworld had a secret, one that even Jason didn't fully understand yet. There were forces at play far older than any species, far more powerful than any weapon. We need to stay ahead of them, Jason said, his voice sharp. The galaxy is going to come after us. We've got to be ready. Sarah looked at him, her eyes hard with resolve. We will be. As the humans continued to unlock the mysteries of the Deathworld, they began to uncover something far more dangerous than they had ever expected. Deep beneath the surface, hidden within the planet's core, was an ancient repository of knowledge, technology, and wisdom left behind by the civilization that had created the Deathworld. But there was something else buried within it. A warning. The warning was clear. The Deathworld was never meant to be controlled. Jason's heart sank as he read the words, written in a language older than anything they had ever encountered. This wasn't just a warning for the aliens. It was for the humans, too. The Deathworld was not just a weapon. It was a balance, a force meant to keep the galaxy in check. To control, it would mean disrupting that balance. But it was too late to turn back now. The humans had already become part of the Deathworld. The planet had chosen them. The dawn of a new era was on the horizon, but it wasn't going to be easy. The humans had gained control of the Deathworld, but they had also become a target. Powerful forces across the galaxy were starting to take notice, and the balance that had kept the galaxy in harmony was beginning to shift. Jason stood on the edge of their camp, looking at the glowing horizon. The Deathworld was both their greatest ally and their most dangerous weapon. But one thing was certain. They would fight to the end to protect it. Or not just defending the Deathworld, Jason whispered, his voice full of conviction. We're defending the galaxy. This is our fight now. And we will win. The humans had awakened a power beyond their comprehension, and with it, they had become the galaxy's ultimate protectors. The storm had passed, but a new dawn was breaking in. With it, the humans were ready to take their place as the true masters of the Deathworld. But the galaxy had no idea what was coming. And neither did the humans. The battle for the Deathworld was far from over. The true war had only just begun.